Europe has suffered the worst economic and financial crisis of the last decades, but finally survived. European citizens, however, paid a high price for that, and now they are losing faith to the European project. To discuss about this, I'm joined here in the Brussels Economic Forum by a key person of the crisis management, the head of the European Stability Mechanism, Klaus Regling. Mr. Regling, many thanks for joining me on Global Conversation. So, you are the head of a mechanism created at the peak of the financial crisis to give bailout money to countries in need. If I'm not wrong, you have given more than 250 billion euros so far. So, where do this money come from? And I'm asking you this because of all this rhetoric of the taxpayers' money about French or Germans paying the countries who have this need. Is this argument really justified in real terms?
Well, yes and no. The money that we disperse to these countries comes from the markets. When we make a disbursement to Greece or in the past to Ireland, Portugal, this is not money that comes from the national budgets of our shareholders. However, the arrangement means that the budgets of our shareholders assume risks, because when they guarantee our operation, these are risks that are taken by the national budgets. If something goes wrong, these risks would lead to real cost.
Greece is a special case, as it is the only country now that is under a program, under the ESM supervision. What is the situation now? We have also Eurogroup ahead on Thursday. What should be expected?
So Greece indeed is a special case. All the other four countries which have exited their program successfully, they only needed one program. So Greece is in the third program for one reason, that the starting point was the most difficult. The misalignments were the biggest. And also there was a big setback in the Greek developments a year ago. During the first half of 2015, the Greek government tried a new approach. They reversed some of the reforms, and therefore the positive developments, which we also saw in Greece in 2014, was interrupted quite seriously.
Do you mean that the third program could be avoided?
Well, I don't know whether it could have been avoided completely, but certainly it would have been much smaller. But now we have the third program. The cooperation with the Greek government is again productive. When the Eurogroup meets, I think there's a good chance that might be a decision taken on the next disbursement.
And there is this big discussion about the debt relief and debt reprofiling of Greece. And there was a statement by the Eurogroup last time saying that, of course, the mechanism could be triggered after the program if needed. This if needed, what does this if needed mean? You mean that it is sustainable or not?
Well, that is a big question, and given that we have a very long time horizon during which this program runs, the program will come to an end, but our loans will only mature over the next 30 or 32 years, and we want to make sure that during this period Greece can stand again on its own feet. We have to deal with the uncertainty that comes with such a long period. We all know that forecasts are always risky. There's always uncertainty, even for the next year. So as we are dealing with a 30-year period, necessarily uncertainty is much, much higher. And therefore, I think the statement from the Eurogroup is quite appropriate, that they stand ready to help Greece if Greece also implements reforms. I think this is very good, because to take all the decisions now might be too little or not enough, very hard to say. And if it's not enough, then Greece would suffer. If it's too much, then the member states of the euro area will not be very happy.
In less than 10 days, the British citizens will decide whether to stay in the European Union or not. So if they decide to leave the EU family, what could be the next day of Europe? What is your biggest fear?
Politically, it would be a big loss for the EU if the UK leaves, and that's why every EU government wants the UK to stay. I think economically there would also be cost, particularly for the UK. There are many studies on that. The precise cost is not clear, because it will very much depend what happens the following few years, what kind of arrangement the UK would find with the EU. And there will be some relation, of course. There will be trade, there will be a relationship, but how it will look like exactly, we don't know, and we don't know how long it will take to come to such an understanding. And therefore, it's very hard to predict what exactly happens. It's also possible that markets will be very volatile.
So this could revive a new crisis in the eurozone, in the European Union in general?
That I don't know, because volatility in markets does not always immediately mean a crisis. But volatility in markets can be bad for economic developments. But I don't see a crisis coming out of that.
And as you are one of the architects of the Stability Pact as we know it right now, today, Jean-Claude Juncker, the EU Commission President, has been criticized recently of giving leeway, giving time to France, another time, to reach the fiscal target, the deficit of 3%. Is France a different case?
I think it's very important that we have clear fiscal rules in the monetary union, because in the European Monetary Union we have this unique experiment that monetary policy is totally centralized, one interest rate, one exchange rate. Other policy areas, fiscal policy, structural reforms, are done in the different countries in a decentralized way. And there are people who have always argued for decades that this cannot work. And our answer has always been it can work, but it needs to be well coordinated. We have also, during the last few years, made the Stability Pact more flexible to accommodate different economic situations, and I think that's good to some extent.
Should France be given more time to adjust?
Well, that depends on the analysis, and the Commission is in charge of that. As I said, there are now more factors taken into account in deciding on flexibility. But overall, there has to be equal treatment among countries.
Mm-hmm. And the last question, have you ever felt that the eurozone might collapse?
I think we got close to that in 2011 and 12. But because all these different initiatives, the European Central Bank, the EFSF, ESM, banking union, the adjustment in the countries concerned, it all was already on a good way. Therefore, it's very easy to understand now with hindsight why, in the end, this did not happen. We got close to it, and I think also without the creation of the EFSF, for instance, some countries would have been forced probably to leave the euro area. So I'm very happy that that could be avoided. So we had very risky moments during the last few years, but I think we can be quite proud of what has been achieved.
So no country is at risk of leaving the eurozone right now. Can you say that?
No, not at all, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Regling, thank you very much for being with us.
You're welcome.